I can hear you fine.
Fabulous. Okay, great. Yeah, I was just running around, just finished with the client, so I've just sat down. So give me a second to reorganize my thoughts, but otherwise I am very well indeed. Thank you.
Yeah, you should have washed your hands before you came on radio there, Marcel.
I definitely wash my hands. I wash my hands after every client, actually. So thank you. Yes, that is a necessary part.
Is that Swarfiga I can see on your fingers?
I beg your pardon? What can you see?
Swarfiga was what we used to use for removing oil and grime and things, you know.
I see. Sorry, I'm way too young for that, guys. I'm sorry.
I know, that joke was wasted. All the old days, they're swallowing the false teeth now. They thought that was hysterical. Everyone else, what's he talking about?
Listen, guys, we have a topic today. It's actually a very good topic, but I think we need to get the nonsense out of the way first.
Yes.
There's going to be some nonsense. And we're going to be talking about stiffness.
Correct.
What is it, and what do you do with it? We're not talking about erectile dysfunction or morning glory, are we?
No, but we can. But no, that wasn't the topic of.
No.
I have no doubt that Dave's going to bring it up. Someone's going to bring it up. I'm pleased we've hit it early in the call. But it wouldn't necessarily be dysfunction, because if you have stiffness, that's a good thing, right? So obviously that would be function, but we're not going to cover that in a male capacity, in a penile capacity. That's not our conversation.
Okay, I'm glad.
I can feel a Vicar of Dibley moment and coming on going, no. Yes.
Do you know that we were actually friends with him? We knew that guy. He was very nice.
Did you? Yeah. Well, apparently he was a lovely bloke, wasn't he? He was
very nice.
very, very clever guy.
Yeah, I went to school with his daughter, and my brother was best friends with his son.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Nice guy. Sad, though, obviously he's no longer with us. But anyway, yeah, funny guy. Very funny.
So, Marcel, stiffness. What are we talking about here?
Well, why did I want to bring it up? I'll tell you for why I wanted to bring it up. A lot of people tell me how stiff they are in the morning. I think everyone feels that same sort of thing. And again, let's be careful, tread very carefully about what we're talking about here, but we're talking about muscular stiffness, potentially in the back. It could be in your legs. It could be your calf muscles. Anywhere, really, you can get stiffness. Stiffness in the neck as well is very, very common. And so what I wanted to do is try to address ways in which it can be avoided, why it comes about, and obviously how and if somebody like me can help you with it as well.
Right, and are there, as a therapist, are there sort of degrees of stiffness from just a little bit of discomfort to, I don't know, something that could be debilitating?
Yes, so it's actually a really good question. There isn't necessarily a classified grading of stiffness, but there are different types of stiffness. So I think first what would be useful is to identify what I'm talking about in relation to, let's say, physical exercise. So physical exercise is the one that most people relate the term stiffness to, because when we are physically active, we can create something known as DOMS, which is an abbreviation for delayed onset of muscle fatigue or stress, which is where the S comes in. Okay, depending on where you were schooled. So what that means is that you have stressed the muscles of your body, and you are, as your body begins to the process of recovering, you get stiffness, which is indicated by rigidity in the muscle. So a reluctance of the muscle to move or perform, soreness when you use the muscle, limited range of motion, pain on touching it. So if you were to poke it, for example, if we're thinking about a particular muscle, let's say the leg muscles, if a person has done a lot of walking, they've tackled a new hill, they've run a greater distance than normal, they've lifted more weights than normal, then all of these things are an overload for the muscle. And it's not a bad thing. It just means that you've stressed the muscle, and the chances are you're going to make that muscle stronger. But for it to become stronger, it has to recover from said exercise. And that's where we get stiffness from.
And is this to do with the buildup of lactic acid in the muscles? Because
Yeah.
we've been exercising more than we're used to, and we don't have the blood supply sort of readily available in the muscles, and the lactic acid kind of builds up and causes some of this discomfort.
Yes and no. So classically, we've always understood that soreness comes from lactic acid, but actually the science is now proving that it's not necessarily lactic acid that's causing that muscular pain. It's actually
All
the
right.
repair process. It's quite interesting because when I was taught that it's lactic acid. And we're talking about 25 years ago, 25 plus years ago. And that's what my understanding was. But as the science has evolved, we actually are learning that the muscles function on lactic acid. And that's a whole different category of science and conversation. So it's actually not necessarily an increase of lactic acid. It's another train of thought that evidence has shown is that we cause very small quantities of damage to the muscle. And collectively, we feel that. And therefore, our body is healing from that. And we
Right.
generally feel that pain or discomfort around 48 hours after exertion. So we start to feel it around 12 hours, then we feel it a bit more after 24 hours, and it usually peaks at about 48 hours. Now, anyone who's trained legs regularly, for example, doing weightlifting using your legs, the famous thing is trying to sit on the toilet is often the very hardest thing to do. Because you're so stiff in the legs that bending at the knees and lowering yourself down is a struggle. And then once you're there, you kind of can relax. And then getting up from that is also a struggle. So it's quite amusing. And it can affect anybody, obviously, particularly if you've used your muscles. But it's infamous amongst people who train their legs in a gym setting using more load than just their body weight. So having DOMS or muscle soreness in your legs can be debilitating, but it can happen anywhere. In fact, the worst experience I've had of DOMS, aside from legs after leg day, was in my biceps when I mistakenly joined a weights class, a workout class. It was a weights to music class, or it's a body pump. That's what they call it, body pump.
Right.
And you had to take a barbell and you repeated, for example, bicep curls for, I probably did between 100 to 200 bicep curls in the space of this 45 minutes, because of course it's meant to be rhythmic and moving and so on and so forth.
Right.
But what I underestimated was my capacity to manage that many repetitions. So I took what I thought was a lightweight, and even the instructor said that might be a little heavy after this class. And I was like, no, I'll be fine. And I completed the class. I was tired, but I completed the class. The next day, and anyone on camera, I was stuck. I woke up and I was stuck in this position, and I had to push my arms away from each other because they were so, after my sleep, I was so seized up in my arms that they were completely rigid. And I'd never experienced that before. And that was a very strong indication of DOMS, which can be quite debilitating. So in that capacity, that was so intense for me that I actually had to really warm up the muscle. I actually wasn't yet trained as a therapist either, so I didn't really know what I was doing. I was just kind of rubbing it and using some creams and stuff. I didn't think to take painkillers or anything like that, but painkillers can be very effective with DOMS. Not recommended because it's a bit excessive for what it is, but it can be effective if you're suffering from quite severe pain from muscular soreness. So it's worth considering.
But Marcel, I'm sure most of us at some point in our lives have experienced
Exactly.
that or similar.
Exactly.
But for someone like me that doesn't do a lot of physical exercise, I have to say I don't do enough physical exercise.
Right.
It's one of the things that puts me off starting, because it's like I know this is going to hurt like hell when I get up tomorrow morning.
Yes, and that you're right, because once you've experienced it once, you're like, oh gosh, I really don't want to go through that again. And there are ways to mitigate that soreness that you feel through certain minerals, through hydration. That's probably one of the most important ones, because what you want to do, which is what you said before, was flush the system. And the way to flush the system is by ingesting as much fluid as possible so that you can then filter it out through your waste product. And that's going to be very, very effective. But you can also do that via minerals. So magnesium and potassium are both very, very useful in the function and the sort of distillation, should we say, of that muscle soreness. So it's worth taking those. So a banana, a very ripe banana, is a great thing to have after exercise, particularly vigorous exercise. Aside from the vitamin C's and the energy, you're also getting potassium, which is very, very useful in the recovery of said exercise.
I've got to tell you, Marcel, we just had an email in off a guy there, Colin Morris in Peterborough. He's put, "Morning, guys. Just to let you know, the information that Marcel is giving out is extraordinary because it explains one problem I had the morning after I got married many years ago, after carrying the wife over the threshold."
Now, a lot of questions have now come to mind, and I don't know if I could ask them. That's the thing. I'm curious. It would explain why he was so fatigued because of the vigorous exercise that he endured. Is that what we're saying?
Must be. Colin Morris in Peterborough. What are you trying to say, Colin? Your wife's she can't be that big, surely.
Funnily enough, actually, interestingly, funny that he mentioned carrying. I love a tradition, a Lithuanian tradition. My wife is Lithuanian. They have a tradition in Lithuania. When you get married, you are supposed to carry your wife over 7 bridges.
7?
As part of 7, not 1, not 3, not 4, 7. Who came up with the number? I don't know. What it's supposed to demonstrate is your strength as a man. I think that's a brilliant tradition. Did I do it? No. I went over one very small little bridge in a park, and that was it. That was all we had time for. But otherwise, I think that's a great tradition, and that would cause muscular soreness. I can imagine.
But
even if you have the smallest wife.
Sorry, mate. No, I was just going to say, but there's a race, isn't there, in Europe somewhere where these men carry the wives on the backs, but they have the legs around the face.
That's right.
And they wrap themselves around the waist somehow. They
Correct.
hold on tight. They take it serious, but they run through marshes.
It's like a backpack.
Yeah.
So your leg is your wife is behind you, and her legs come round to the front. They interlock their legs and they wrap their arms around your waist. So her face is by your backside, basically. And the most hilarious thing is that they have to jump into water.
Yeah.
So imagine these guys are jumping in the water. The wife's head is dunked under the water level.
Drowning her.
You're drowning her, and you've got to try and get out of those. And funny enough, some of the best at that were Lithuanians. Would you believe it?
Yeah.
Some of the best at it.
That's all the practice they have carrying the women across bridges. Yeah.
It's a different practice. I think her in her wedding dress might be problematic as well. But yes, it's a different activity. But apparently it would appear that the Lithuanians are very good at wife carrying. Who knew, right? Who knew?
Well, I would get away with that because my wife only weighs 45 kilos. But
I was going to say,
when I look at some people's wives,
if I was going to choose a wife to carry over 7 bridges, it would be your wife, right? I mean, that she's very, very light. But nonetheless, even if you were carrying her, and it would be something that you haven't trained for or you've never done before, in relation to the topic that we're talking about,
you'd be on your knees, wouldn't you?
You'd be on your knees, you'd be struggling, but you'd also probably get the next day quite a lot of muscular stiffness. So
I think I would,
yeah, that would be very, very normal. But so what you would do to counteract that is another thing that you can do that I always recommend my client actually is a hot bath with Epsom salts. I'm a massive proponent of Epsom salt because it contains magnesium as a salt, and the salt is actually absorbed through the skin. And the reason you want to you can actually have it in a cold bath as well. But one of the bonuses of a hot bath is that it dissolves very easily, although it dissolves in both. But because a hot bath will draw blood to the surface of your skin, when you turn red in a hot bath, that's your blood rushing to the surface of your skin to dispel heat. It's a great way to get the magnesium into your system as well because it will be absorbed via your skin. So that is a great way to help with muscular soreness as well. And for general health purposes, Epsom salt baths regularly are very, very useful.
Yeah, but this sort of taking magnesium, and I'm familiar with magnesium in particular.
Yep.
is this something that if people are going to be starting exercising, you just don't do it the day after you do your exercise and say, oh God, my muscles are hurting, I better take some magnesium. Is this something that they should be building up along with their exercise?
Yeah, it would be a good idea to start the process beforehand. You can start at any point. It's a mineral,
Sure.
yeah? So it's not going to, it probably won't have a tremendous impact on your general state of well-being. It won't do any harm, that's for sure. But it's worth starting, if you know you want to get back into exercise, it's worth starting magnesium, to be honest. For women, magnesium is actually a staple daily supplement that you should be taking. That's a standard. If you are physically active, you definitely want to be taking it, or perhaps a bit more. If you're male, you certainly can be taking it, and you also might want to consider taking zinc as well.
Right. Yeah, but Vicky gives me tablets and things, and
From the vet.
zinc. Yeah, they were actually prescribed for the dogs, but she said they don't like them, so you can have them.
Taste the peppermint.
Fair enough.
But there's zinc, magnesium, chromium is another one that I get for some reason or
Okay.
other.
Yeah. Nice.
But I do get sort of like, take these,
Yes.
and that's like for the next month or something,
Yeah. No, it's good. Well, whatever she's read most recently that seems pertinent is, you're going to take those. Yeah, absolutely. No, and that's the thing. It certainly won't do you any harm. And obviously, minerals that we are deficient in, based on where we are geographically or perhaps our diet, definitely can make a huge difference. And in terms of recovery, which is a huge topic in itself, and part of this muscular soreness is about recovery and your body's ability to do so. But even the fittest people in the world, when they push new levels of physical exertion, they will still get soreness. It's just an automatic response. So it's not an indication. It's an indication of your fitness level, but it's not something that you wouldn't be unaware of. Because, for example, if you're a person who sits at a desk all day long and then you go for a 10-mile walk, you can expect you're going to feel tired and probably quite sore from that, because that's not your normal. If you're somebody who runs 10 kilometers every day, you're probably not going to get sore from that after doing it for 2 or 3 years. But if you then run that same distance at twice the speed, you're very likely to get sore.
Yeah, we had a visitor. She's a journalist, worked with an international magazine. She came down here a couple of years ago, and she wanted us to show her around Mijas Pueblo. Now, for people who don't know, Mijas Pueblo is one of the white villages. It's basically built on the side of a mountain. Mm-hmm. And we had a great time with her, and we walked for, I don't know, probably about 4 hours. But you can imagine in Mijas Pueblo, it's a lot of steps up, a lot of hills down.
Oh,
and I felt absolutely fine until the next day.
Yeah.
And my gluteus was hurting like hell the next day.
Good.
Like, even just sitting down, it's like, oh my God, my backside hurts.
Oh, is that what it is? I was sat here thinking, do I go there? Do I find out what the gluteus is?
I was going to say, which part are we going to go into more detail about what that is?
Yeah, I was worried.
You've just hit the nail on the head. One of the best ways to get a peachy backside is stairs.
Right, yeah.
If you want to work if you go to any gym and you look at the ladies and men that are training, that want to get the thick back, shall we say? The Beyonce, exactly. They do the stair, the recumbent stair thing. That's absolutely brilliant. Or if you go and find a bunch of stairs in a local village, that's going to give you a great workout as well. So absolutely. Yeah. And so for you, it was fatiguing. For her, how was it?
I didn't ask how her backside was afterwards.
You didn't ask? Oh, I thought that would have been the first thing you'd ask. Okay, fair enough.
You'd been gripping it and feeling it, saying, all right, want a second opinion.
The thing is, it didn't hurt that day at all. No. I felt fine.
That's right.
But it was when I got up the next morning.
Absolutely.
Out of bed, and even just sitting on the edge of the bed to get up, it's like, oh my God, my backside hurts.
That's absolutely right. And that's exactly what happened. So there you experienced exactly that, because you did more in that time frame than you normally do. If you were to do that every other day, the same distance, after 2 or 3 weeks, you wouldn't get sore anymore.
Yeah.
So that's what overload is. That's how you become stronger or fitter or faster. You always have to do a little bit more than your body's used to. Now, if you do a lot more than your body's used to, you're going to get very sore. And that's the reaction.
Yeah. Yeah. Like you with your bicep curls.
Like me with my bicep curls, exactly. So I never did them again, and now I have tiny biceps. So that's exactly what happens. So that's not true, but similar. Yeah, exactly. My reaction was that I underestimated the reaction of doing repeated bicep curls with this weight, which was for the first 10 like nothing, but after 100 to 200 I could really feel it. So, and then the next day I was locked up, so it was quite an extreme feeling, and I had soreness for about a week, which is a very long time. So yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the kind of soreness or stiffness that will result from physical exercise,
Correct.
Marcel.
Yeah.
You said that there are several types of stiffness
Correct.
and this kind of muscle soreness.
So the one that's probably the most common, other than that, would be stress-related. So stress-related stiffness is also very, very common, unfortunately, and also quite debilitating as well, because it is something that it will kind of creep up on you. You tend not to know or be too aware of it unless you're aware of how stressed you are, and we're all not very good. We're becoming much more self-aware in sort of newer times, shall we say, but historically, and I'm sure for you guys on here, you're very aware that stress is just something you deal with or you ignore and then you get on with life, right? So nowadays we tend to try and take a little bit more of a mindful approach to it, should we say? But stress, which can be caused by many factors, we've discussed this before, from emotional to physical, obviously, to medical as well, these things will contribute to stiffness. And where we feel this most is in our shoulders. So a lot of people will get a lot of tension through their shoulders. They don't feel it necessarily until somebody either grabs their shoulders and it's like, oh, it's like a knife in my shoulder, or their neck starts to stiffen up. And this is what I see quite a lot of. There's quite a lot of neck stiffness from stress and or muscle stiffness, because obviously the shoulders are directly attached to the neck, and those muscles, the upper traps and so on, will extend all the way to the base of the skull. And if those become very, very stiff, then it means that your ability to turn and rotate your head will become increasingly limited, because those muscles are no longer elastic like they once were.
Yeah, and I think last time, Marcel, we were talking about headaches as well.
That's right.
And this kind of neck stiffness or shoulder neck stiffness can also result in headaches, yeah?
Yes, exactly right. So that's where the correlation is. You've got physical stress, mental, emotional stress, manifesting in the shoulders, radiating up the neck and into the head, eventually causing either stiffness in the neck or headaches and migraine, etc.
Yeah, but Marcel, let's be honest, we cannot remove stress from our lives.
Correct.
So, and even managing stress sometimes, when it's things we can't control, can be very difficult. But how do we avoid that stress then creating these problems in our shoulders and neck? Because the stress is still going to be there.
Correct.
But we don't want it to affect us in that kind of physical way.
Yeah. So this is a very important topic, because it is something that a lot of people don't do, which is, first of all, acknowledgement of it.
Right.
That's often the hardest thing. A lot of, and particularly men, this is a masculine thing. I feel that men will feel that I'm not stressed, I'm fine, and so they're kind of ignoring it. And when somebody then grabs the shoulder or ask them to do certain things like moving their neck in a certain way, there's a huge amount of rigidity there. Now, obviously, I'm basing this on the fact that there is nothing mechanically wrong with their neck. That's a different story. But if we're just talking about the average individual who has no mechanical or bony issues, if we were to grab their shoulders, we'd probably find that they're very, very tight. And it doesn't necessarily mean that it's a bad thing. It just means that if you are tight in the neck, or your movement through rotation, looking left and right, looking up, is limited, it might be because of years of buildup of this physical stress that's been created by stress of some description, emotional, work-related, whatever. And if you were to acknowledge it, first of all, then do something about it, then you can obviously affect it massively. And the things you can do about it are therapy from somebody like myself, manual therapy, stretching, hydration, exercise, and considering possible supplementation as well. So that's at least 5 things that you can do.
Right.
And that's not even addressing the actual stress itself, because stress itself can be mitigated and managed by doing other things that allow you to have an outlet. And again, they can be correlated with exercise, mindfulness, meditation perhaps. The stretching I've already mentioned could be your outlet. The physical exercise could be your outlet. So it just depends on what works for you. But the first thing is acknowledgement of its existence.
Right.
And that's the best way. And then in terms of treatment, aside from what I've said, you can apply direct heat. Direct heat works rather well, particularly with muscular stiffness, especially what is called chronic stiffness. So chronic stiffness would be somebody who's had limited movement, let's say in the neck, for more than 3 months. That's chronic stiffness. So you could start the process of alleviating that by identifying the cause, but also applying some direct heat to the area. And that's a very simple way of starting the circulation moving through that tissue again to help it become more elastic.
Right. Marcel, we're going to take a short break.
Yeah.
We're going to listen to Take That, Brand New Sun. You can sing along with it if you wish.
Great.
And we'll be back in just a few moments.
Fantastic.
You're listening. The best variety of music and conversation.
You're listening to Expat Radio, beaming out across France and around the world.
Welcome back. I'm Bill Anderson, coming live from the Costa del Sol with my good friend, regular contributor, Marcel Salazar. Welcome back, Marcel.
Hello. Can you hear me okay?
Oh, your mic is on mute.
Can you unmute me? I can't do it.
You've got your mic on mute.
There we go. No, it wouldn't let me do it. That's all. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now, Marcel.
Okay, great.
Yes.
Sorry, it froze up for a moment. I was like, oh, I can't do it.
I was doing some lip reading there, you know,
Yeah,
and I think there were some bad words came out of those lips.
Not at all. Not at all. I kept my composure.
So, but Marcel, we're talking about stiffness in the body. We were talking about physical exercise, which I think there's probably nobody listening right now that has never experienced that, and also how stress can lead to tightness and stiffness in the muscles, particularly shoulders, neck, and the kind of problems that can cause. You've said that taking supplements can very often help these. So what would you say? Magnesium?
Magnesium, potassium. For men in particular, zinc is very useful as well. So those are the ones that would directly impact the recovery process, shall we say. So they don't necessarily help to prevent, but it is very, very effective at helping to improve the recovery process from physical exercise.
Right.
Yeah. So those would be the most effective. But obviously, you're still probably going to suffer from soreness because that's normal. It's something that's a normal reaction to. It's a normal reaction to physical exercise.
Yeah, but I mean, let's be honest. If you want to improve your physical condition, there isn't really a way of doing that. You can't just plug yourself into an app and wake up in the morning and say, oh God, I feel stronger now.
Yeah.
I mean, there isn't really a way of doing that without creating some level of discomfort, is there?
This is the thing about physical exercise. It's one of the few things in the world that you cannot buy. You can't buy your physical health. You can pay somebody to train you, but you still have to do the work. You can pay a gym in order to join it, but you still have to do the work. So just having the membership or just having a PT or just having the right clothing is not enough. You always have to take part. And that's the one thing you have to earn fitness and health and so on. And so that's something that really a lot of people either forget, misunderstand, don't want. So, the reality of it is, I'd rather not work for it if I have to.
Come on, Marcel. I think it's don't want to understand more than either of the previous two.
Most likely. But again, that's being a product, I suppose, of our upbringing and what we've learned and what we've been told. Because money buys you lots of things, but it doesn't buy you physical fitness or stronger muscles or big muscles or a great body. I mean, you can change or improve your body through, let's say, surgical processes, but it's never going to look as good as if you do it naturally yourself.
Yeah.
You've got to watch Botched on the telly to see that. You've seen that? My God, the idiots that go on that. Bill won't say you haven't seen this, have you, Bill? Because you don't use the television.
I don't have television.
Oh, no. There's basically there's these people that they're off another planet. A lot of them, they turn up and they want everything made 5 times bigger than it should be, and it's just completely unnatural. And and you think, and even men, they go in for these implants in their arms to make themselves look bigger, or in the chest because they haven't got the time to go to the gym. And you just think, well, it looks ridiculous because it just doesn't look natural. The rest of the body doesn't fit with what they're trying to do. But you think, what are you thinking?
Have you seen the ones? This is particularly common in Brazil. There is.
Well, there's the phone now. That's all we need.
Yeah, there's something called synthol, and synthol is effectively an oil that you can inject into a part of your body if you want to inflate it, literally like a balloon. It's incredibly dangerous. Why you'd want to do it doesn't make any sense. It looks ridiculous, but it's very, very common. And you get these men who will put it into their pecs, into their arms, the front, the back, and they just look like a balloon person put together, but they think it looks amazing. And it's very, very odd, very dangerous. Lots of people have had infections from it. Some people have died from it, but that's the level that people will go to. And they might still train and they can physically move, but they don't have muscle. It's just compartments of oil under the surface of their skin. It's really gross. If you ever look it up, it's really something unreal. But these guys are very proud of it sometimes, so it's very odd.
I think I would rather just look a bit scrawny than put that stuff in, to be honest.
That's it. And I think Vicky would love you a lot more that way than with using the synthol, let's face it. So, it's definitely not, it's not appealing, it's not attractive, but it's the extreme end of these adjustments that people can make, both using products they can buy. This is the thing, is that this is something that you can buy on the street. You can do it yourself, rather than even having to go to a professional. What Dave was talking about was people who have been to plastic surgeons, they've made a mess, and then they go back to these specialist plastic surgeons who try and sort out the mess. So, it's just this vicious cycle of adjustment.
I know that the things that people tend to get done with plastic surgery or cosmetic surgery, are things that exercise might not necessarily cure. If they want fat lips or I don't know, smooth skin or whatever.
Yeah.
But living where we do, we're next door to Marbella. There are a lot of cosmetic private clinics in Marbella.
Yep.
And I'm sure we have all seen people who have had these procedures done. Now, I'm not criticizing them. They want to go through that. I think, well, you're brave.
Yeah.
But when I look at it, and they look as if they've been very often in a boxing ring with Tyson Fury.
Definitely.
I think I'd rather have sort of stiff muscles to try to than actually go through that.
So this is, I think what you're referring to is the lips, right? I mean, with the Botox lips.
I've seen lips and eyes and whole facelifts done, and sometimes they just look like they're black and blue.
Yeah, and it's. I mean, the lips thing I don't understand. The lips, the duck lips thing, I don't fully understand that. Botox actually has some interesting applications other than for that as a muscle relaxant and stimulant. You
Yes.
can actually use it quite effectively for some musculoskeletal issues, not cosmetic, but actually for musculoskeletal issues. That is quite an interesting thing. But again, it's highly toxic. It can be quite dangerous for certain individuals, and you're injecting and so on. So anyway, we're kind of divulging here into something different. But yes, I mean, a lot of what can be done. For example, what's again very popular is something like a butt lift, where people get their buttocks, and particularly this is a female preoccupation, is with obviously having the thick back that's obviously with a lot of meat. But that is something that can be worked at the gym. Some people are less genetically predisposed to having a bigger backside. That is a limitation, and that is very unfortunate. But the majority of people, if they trained specifically that muscle, because the backside, your gluteus muscle, is a large, thick, dense muscle, obviously the more you train it, the thicker it will become, the bigger it will become, and the more pronounced it can therefore become. But it can take time. I mean, this is about patience, right? So it can take 1, 2, maybe 3 years of consistent training to get to the thickness that you want. You go to a surgery, and within a month after recovery, you've got this enormous bulging backside that might be what you want, but it won't be something you've worked for, and it won't be something necessarily that will be proportionate and look good on you. So it's just different strokes for different folks. But exercise can affect body shape for sure, definitely.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So, Marcel, physical exercise can cause stiffness. I think we all understand that.
Yep.
Stress.
Yep.
And I'd be surprised if anybody listening today has never, felt tight shoulders or stiff neck, when they're in stressful situations.
Correct.
Are there any other causes for stiffness?
So medication. Medications are interesting because, again, we're not going to heavily blame or go into anything about the pharmaceutical companies, but it is very, very important to be aware that certain medications will directly impact the function of muscles without that being its primary goal. So a side effect.
Right.
So a side effect of some medications, and it's well worth considering if you find that you're very stiff in certain areas or in your legs or your calves or whatever, and you're on a new medication and this is new for you, consult the packaging, consult your doctor and ask them, is this something that is a side effect from the medication? And then what you want to do is ideally reduce, change, or eliminate that medication altogether rather than, and this is the most common route, rather than take another medication to counteract that side effect.
That's what very often happens, though, isn't it?
That's what very often happens. And that happens because it's very important. It's easier for a doctor to prescribe another drug than to evaluate an alternative.
Right.
That's often what is the case. And unfortunately, the more medication a person is, the better that often is as well. So not for the patient, but for other people. So it's always worth thinking to yourself, what can I do if I know that this medication that I'm taking is giving me this side effect? Can I change the brand? Can I reduce the amount I have to take? Should I be doing more physical exercise so I don't have to take this medication? Those types of things, rather than thinking, doctor, give me another medication to counteract the side effects of my first.
Right. So you wouldn't happen to know, and I'm not talking about specific, brands of specific drugs, but are there kind of groups of drugs that are more likely to create this? Would it be things for your heart, things for your blood pressure?
Antidepressants.
Okay.
Antipsychotics, which is obviously a very strong drug, so obviously you're hopefully not on many of those. But sometimes some medications, remember, are prescribed because they're side effects. So you might be on an antipsychotic drug, but you're taking it because it has a positive impact on some other body part, or it has an impact on some other part of your body as a side effect. So you're not taking it for its primary purpose. You're taking it because of the side effects. So there can be benefits to that as well, as long as it's well evaluated, well managed, and you're benefiting from taking the medication. Then of course it's a no-brainer and it's a lifesaver very often. But that's the interesting thing about medications, is that some people will be taking what is classically used as a very strong antidepressant or antipsychotic, but it's the side effect that comes from it that you're actually using it for. So there are certainly in that category. The other thing that I did want to mention was early signs of Parkinson's can actually be through very tight muscles in the neck.
Right. Okay.
So that is quite an interesting one that I've recently come across as well, which is that potential early warning signs of Parkinson's, aside from the obvious. Most people know tremors are the more common signs of Parkinson's. You can also suffer from something called essential tremor, which is different from Parkinson's. But again, it results in that shaking of the hand or the leg or a limb or something like that that's unconscious. But stiffness or rigidity through the neck is another early warning sign of that condition. So if you are suffering from a limited range of motion, very stiff neck, it might be worth getting an investigation and being tested for, just in case.
Right. And, we're not telling people, and you've said it very clearly, but I'll repeat it. We're not telling people to stop taking their medications.
Certainly not.
But very often one preparation may be available in 4 or 5 different forms.
Correct.
So if
absolutely.
you need for a particular condition, there may be another one that will work better for you.
That's right. So this is something that I learned about firstly from my connection to a little bit of pharmacology during my education, but then more so in relation because my wife is a pharmacist and we would sometimes discuss medications with clients. But what she was acutely aware of is that you get different brands, you get different formulas, and those can sometimes have different reactions on different people. So you've got the branded ones from all the big companies that still hold major patents, for example. But then when the patents get released, you can have other companies producing them at a much lower cost, for example, with a slightly different makeup. And that results in you having a different reaction as well.
Right. Marcel, we've just got a few minutes left. Is there any other thing you covered? Physical exercise, stress, and medication can all be sort of precursors to stiffness in the body. Anything else in the last few minutes that we've got?
Well, in terms of stiffness itself, those are the main causes. Of course, if you've suffered any trauma or accident or you've been immobile for a long period of time, you're definitely going to be stiff. That's based on weakness. That's based on your muscles not having circulation traveling through them. But what I did want to say was that a very effective medium is to have tissue release from somebody like myself, either a massage therapist or perhaps a chiropractor or a physical therapist like myself, who can manipulate the tissue under the surface of your skin, warm it up, stretch it out, relax it down. And if you have chronic stiffness, it's worth considering. If you want to change it, it's worth considering doing something on a regular basis. Where I've seen the greatest success with clients who have had years of tension through their neck and shoulders is having regular treatments over a period of time. If you do 1 or 2 sessions, it will probably be quite uncomfortable and it might give you some relief for a short term, but your body is so used to holding you in a certain way that it's just doing it like that naturally. So to break that chain, having some regular treatments whereby you are increasing blood flow, you're improving the elasticity, you're reducing pain as well, it makes a huge difference, not just to your movement, but to your quality of life, to your quality of sleep. If you're doing exercise, if we look at people who are at an elite level, there's a reason why elite level athletes get treatments every single day.
Right.
Every single day, because it helps to mitigate the reaction of their muscles and speed up their recovery.
Marcel, time is running out rapidly.
It is.
If people are interested in what you do, you're a bit like God on social media in that you're everywhere at the same time.
You're
So if people want to
extremely generous, yes. But
If
that's
people want to look you up, do you want to just give us some contact?
of
He
course.
is the Holy Spirit.
And just like God, yeah, the same. Right. So you can find me on Facebook, on Instagram, strongforlife.me. You'll find my website is strongforlife.me or strongforlife.es. You can type both of those into your search browser and you'll find me very, very easily, including my contact number. And I have a YouTube channel as well, which is Physical Therapy, Strong for Life, or Marcel Salazar.
Marcel, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Very informative, but a lot of fun as well.
Exactly. Good. Thank you so much, guys.
Have a great weekend, everyone.
You too. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Take it easy. Adios.
Adios.